5 weeks ago, my wife, Emma, reconnected with her old college friend, Claire. Claire had just moved to the outskirts of Oxford with her husband, James, who was climbing the ranks at a prestigious law firm. They arranged to meet at a quaint little cafe by the River Thames, the Riverside Roastery. When Emma came home that afternoon, there was something different in her eyes. It was subtle, a distant glaze, like she'd glimpsed a life that made ours seem ordinary. Emma started telling me about Claire's new life in Summertown, an affluent neighborhood where professors and tech entrepreneurs lived in stylish townhouses. She mentioned Claire's shiny new Range Rover Evoque, which James had apparently bought her on a whim, parking it in the driveway with a giant red bow. We were unpacking groceries in our modest 3-bedroom semi in Headington, and I just thought it was typical catch-up chatter. Friends compare lives, right? I thought the novelty would fade in a day or two. I was wrong. By day 3, the Range Rover came up again, but not casually. Emma wasn't just mentioning it. She was testing. "You know, James surprised Claire with that car out of the blue," she said, half smiling, eyes flicking to mine. "That's how you know someone really values you." I nodded, said it was a nice surprise, and went back to sorting the shopping bags. I honestly didn't know what she wanted me to say. Was I supposed to buy her a car? Spoiler alert, I wasn't exactly rolling in it. I work as a project manager at a tech company in Oxford, earning a decent £70,000 a year. We have savings, a mortgage we can manage, a retirement plan. Not fancy, but solid. Yet, Emma's disappointment was as clear as the Oxford sky on a sunny day. Each evening, she brought up more details about Claire's life. The newly renovated kitchen that looked like something from a design magazine. The designer handbags Claire casually flaunted. Weekend trips to the Cotswolds vineyards. Every story was delivered with this growing intensity, like she was waiting for me to see the pattern she was painting. By the weekend, Emma suggested we go car shopping. She said it was just a look, mind you. Our 3-year-old Volvo XC60 was perfectly fine. I told her we didn't need a new car right now, that if we did, we'd budget for it properly. She nodded, but that look, disappointment mixed with something else, stayed. Week 2 dripped with comparisons. Monday morning, she said, "James just knows how to treat Claire, doesn't he?" Tuesday, she gushed about their kitchen remodel, how James made sure Claire got her dream cooking space. Wednesday, she showed me Claire's Instagram photos from a weekend in the Cotswolds, scrolling slowly through every perfect shot of sunlit vineyards and candlelit dinners. Thursday was more direct. "Don't you want to give me nice things like that?" I reminded her we had nice things. A home, reliable cars, financial stability. She shook her head, eyes sharp. "No, I mean special things. Thoughtful surprises. Things that show effort." Friday, she went shopping with Claire at the Westgate Center. Posh boutiques we'd never visited, and came home with bags full of things I hadn't approved. When I asked about the cost, she snapped, "I deserve nice things sometimes. Claire never gets questioned about her spending. You're cheap." The weekend brought our first real fight over money. I pulled up our budget and laid out our financial goals. Saving for a bigger house in Summertown someday, retirement funds, emergency savings. Emma looked at it like it was a jail sentence. "Claire never has to worry about budgets," she said bitterly. "Her husband provides a life where money isn't a stress." I tried explaining that James was a senior partner at a law firm, and I wasn't. That was reality, not a flaw. Emma went quiet, but I could tell she wasn't accepting it. By week 3, the comparisons weren't just casual, they were relentless. Monday, she questioned my career path, pointing out James was already a partner and asking when I'd get promoted. I said I was progressing steadily. She asked if steady was good enough. Tuesday, she showed me real estate listings in Summertown, houses 3 times what we could afford, talking about the status and lifestyle. Wednesday, she sent links to luxury SUVs and watches. "Just dreaming," she said. Thursday, she sighed over dinner. "Claire never worries about money. That must be nice." By Friday, she talked about sacrifice, about how she'd given up her dreams for someone who wouldn't even buy her nice things. I asked what dreams. She couldn't name specifics, just this vague sense that life should be bigger, better, more like Claire's. Sunday night, she sat me down for a serious talk about our financial future. She said she felt like she'd been settling. The word hung between us, heavy and poisonous. Settling, as if our 5 years of marriage were just a compromise. She wanted ambition, generosity, proof I valued her. I listened, then asked if comparing me to Claire's husband was really the best way to show what she needed. She said she wasn't comparing, just showing examples of good husbands. I nodded, but what I really understood was this wasn't about communication. It was calculated disrespect disguised as motivation. That night, I made my decision. I wasn't going to play her game. I wasn't going to defend my worth or haggle over my value as a husband. I was going to document everything and wait. Wait for her to reveal who she really was. And when the time was right, I'd show her the consequences of turning marriage into a financial competition. Week 4 hit like a storm. Monday morning, Emma casually sent me a link to a Pinterest board she'd made. Her dream life inspiration, she called it. The images were a parade of luxury. A Cartier bracelet sparkling under soft lighting. A Louis Vuitton tote that looked way too big for her usual errands. A Tag Heuer watch gleaming like a trophy. I nodded to myself. This was the battle flag she was waving. By Tuesday, the comparisons sharpened. Claire's husband got her that Cartier bracelet just because he loves her, Emma said, voice dripping with meaning. The unspoken message was clear. I didn't buy her fancy jewelry, so I didn't love her enough. I almost joked. Maybe I should get you a charm bracelet with all the things you think I'm missing, but I kept quiet. Wednesday brought a jab at my wardrobe. Emma said, James always wears Tom Ford suits to court. Maybe if you dressed like a proper executive, you'd move up faster. I looked down at my standard tech uniform, khakis and a button-down shirt, and thought, right, because the secret to promotion is a tie that costs more than my monthly rent. But again, I bit my tongue. Thursday was the financial ultimatum. She wanted specifics, my 5-year plan for increasing our income and lifestyle. Was I networking, strategizing, climbing? I told her I was doing my job well and opportunities would come. She called that attitude the reason we'd never have what Claire had. I thought, great. Now I'm not just a husband. I'm a career disappointment with a side of bad attitude. Friday night, Emma went out with Claire to an upscale Japanese restaurant downtown, Sakura House. She came home late, breathless with excitement, recounting every dish, the delicate sashimi, the blowtorched nigiri, the sake that was apparently imported from the emperor's own brewery. She sighed. It must be nice to have a husband who doesn't worry about the bill. I reminded her I'd never refused to take her out somewhere nice. She waved it off. There's a difference between agreeing to go and actually wanting to give special experiences. Saturday afternoon, we were watching TV when she dropped the bombshell. Claire's husband just bought her that Range Rover without even asking, she said, voice casual but loaded. That's how you know someone truly values you. When generosity is automatic, not negotiated. I looked her in the eye and asked, what kind of car do you think I drive? She blinked, confused. The Range Rover Evoque, obviously. I asked, would you like me to buy you one like that? She shook her head. I'm just saying it'd be nice to have a husband who shows he cares through meaningful gestures. Ones that take thought and sacrifice. I nodded slowly. Interesting point. She smiled, thinking she'd cracked the code. What she didn't realize was that she'd crossed a line. From subtle dissatisfaction to outright disrespect. She'd reduced our entire marriage to a ledger of expenses and desires. She thought she was training me to be a better husband. I was learning exactly why she didn't deserve one at all. The rest of the week followed the same pattern. Every conversation circled back to what I wasn't providing. Every interaction was a test I was failing. Emma had found a weapon and was using it relentlessly. But while she was tearing me down, I was quietly building my own plan. Then came week 5, the trap was ready. Monday through Wednesday, I agreed with everything she said. When she mentioned Claire and James were planning a trip to the Amalfi Coast, I told her that sounded wonderful, that she deserved a husband who did things like that. She looked surprised, then pleased, thinking she'd finally broken through my resistance. Thursday, I suggested a weekend getaway to the Cotswolds, just an hour's drive from Oxford. Romantic, a chance to reconnect. Emma was thrilled. She thought this was my grand gesture, proof I was finally stepping up. I booked a charming bed and breakfast in Bourton-on-the-Water and snagged a reservation at the Old Mill, a well-reviewed farm-to-table restaurant. Then I did the unexpected. I invited Claire and James to join us for dinner Saturday night. Emma practically glowed with excitement. "It'll be good to get to know them better," I said. "Maybe I can learn a thing or two about how a truly successful marriage works." She beamed, utterly convinced I was humbling myself and ready to change. What she didn't know was I was setting the stage for her complete humiliation, right in front of the very couple she'd been using as her benchmark for months. Saturday evening arrived crisp and clear as we gathered at the Old Mill's cozy dining room. The restaurant was intimate, with soft amber lighting casting gentle shadows over white linen tablecloths and polished silverware. The scent of rosemary and roasting lamb mingled with the low murmur of other diners, creating an atmosphere both elegant and relaxed. Emma wore a sleek navy blue dress that hugged her curves just enough to be suggestive without crossing any lines, her favorite pearl necklace resting delicately against her collarbone. Her black stilettos clicked softly on the wooden floor as she moved with a confident grace. She'd spent extra time on her makeup, the subtle shimmer on her eyelids catching the light every time she glanced at me. I noticed the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Claire arrived next, effortlessly chic in a cream-colored silk blouse tucked into tailored trousers, her blonde hair cascading in loose waves. A delicate gold bracelet sparkled on her wrist, catching the candlelight as she reached out to shake my hand. James followed, dressed in a perfectly pressed charcoal suit with a crisp white shirt and a silk tie in muted burgundy. Despite the sharp attire, his tired eyes betrayed hours of long meetings and courtroom battles. As we settled around the table, Emma immediately launched into a glowing recap of Claire's life. The new handbag, the upcoming Amalfi trip, the kitchen renovation finally finished. She kept shooting me glances, silently asking me to acknowledge every detail, to show the awe she craved. James checked his phone twice within the first 10 minutes, his jaw tight with distraction. He smiled politely but offered little more than nods when Claire spoke. I caught his gaze briefly. There was exhaustion there, a weariness that no amount of tailored suits or luxury watches could hide. I ordered a bottle of the house's finest Pinot Noir, a small indulgence that Emma took as a sign I was finally embracing the lifestyle she wanted. Her smile softened, genuine this time, as she reached for my hand across the table. "See? This is finally happening," she whispered. The starters arrived, roasted beet salad with goat cheese and candied walnuts, followed by seared scallops that melted on the tongue. Emma was practically vibrating with satisfaction, convinced this dinner was the culmination of her campaign to upgrade me. Then came her fatal mistake. Turning to Claire and James, she said with unmistakable confidence, "We're so glad you could join us. I've been telling my husband how much we should aspire to have a marriage like yours." I smiled, keeping my voice calm and steady. "Absolutely. These past 5 weeks, I've learned a lot just hearing about your relationship." James shifted uncomfortably. "Well, every marriage is different," he said cautiously. Emma interrupted, her eyes bright. "No, seriously. You two are relationship goals. The way you treat Claire, the Range Rover, the trips, the kitchen. It's exactly how marriage should be." I leaned forward, voice measured. "You're right. That Range Rover was quite the gesture. If you don't mind me asking, how much did that run?" James glanced at Claire, then back at me, clearly unsettled. "I'd rather not say." Emma jumped in, a little too quickly. "It's not about the cost. It's the thought that counts. Showing your wife she's valued." I turned back to Emma, voice calm but firm. "And you've certainly made that clear over the past 5 weeks. That car has come up about 20 times now." Emma's smile faltered as she realized the direction this conversation was taking. I continued, "You've also mentioned the kitchen renovation, the Amalfi trip, that Cartier bracelet, the Tom Ford suits, the house in Summertown. Around 15 other things I apparently should be providing to prove I love you." Claire's face went pale, eyes wide. "Wait, what?" I looked at her, apologetic but resolute. "You weren't meant to be part of this, but for over a month, your marriage has been held up as the gold standard against mine. Every possession James has bought you has been presented as evidence that I'm failing." James stared at Emma, disbelief and anger mixing in his expression. "You've been doing what?" Emma's voice rose, panic creeping in. We were just talking about nice things. Girl talk." I shook my head. "It wasn't girl talk. It was a calculated campaign to make me feel inadequate because I don't spend money on you the way James spends money on Claire." The restaurant grew quiet. Nearby diners glanced our way, sensing the tension. Emma's face blanched, her fingers clutching the edge of the table like a lifeline. I addressed the table one last time. "Here's what I've learned from all those comparisons. Claire's husband provides an expensive lifestyle, and that's what she values. That's their marriage. But the difference between their marriage and ours isn't money." I looked at Emma, voice steady. "It's gratitude. Claire appreciates what she has. You only see what you don't." Emma tried to protest, voice cracking. "That's not true." I cut her off gently. 5 weeks ago, you said James bought Claire that car without her even asking. You said that's how you know someone values you." Her eyes filled with tears, desperation seeping in. I thought you'd understand. That you'd see I deserve that." I shook my head slowly. "You do deserve that. James or someone like him can give you that. Someone who measures love by credit limits. But I'm not that man, and I never will be." The silence at the table was absolute. Claire looked mortified. James stared at his plate. Emma's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. I stood up, voice calm but resolute. "You wanted a husband who buys you a Range Rover? Go find him. But remember, expensive things aren't the same as being valued. And comparison is the opposite of gratitude." Without another word, I walked out. Emma's voice called after me, but I didn't look back. Outside, the Oxford night swallowed me whole. The trap was sprung, and the game was over. I drove back through the quiet streets of Oxford, the city lights blurring past like the fading chapters of a story I no longer wanted to read. Emma's voice kept ringing in my ears, frantic and pleading, but I had already made up my mind. I checked into a hotel near the train station, the kind of place where the wallpaper peels just enough to remind you this isn't a forever stop. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts, missed calls, voicemails from Emma. The first few were angry. "How could you humiliate me like that? In front of Claire and James?" Then defensive. "I was trying to help you see what you could become." By Thursday, desperation crept in. "Please, we can fix this. Give me one more chance." And on Friday, a voicemail so fragile it almost broke me. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted you to see how to be better." But I didn't answer. Not once. I spent the night replaying every conversation, every comparison, every sting of those 5 weeks. The car, the kitchen, the trips, they weren't about things. They were about respect. Or the lack of it. I wasn't in a competition. I was in an exit strategy. Sunday morning, Emma returned to our house and found my things gone. I'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "I've moved out temporarily. I'll be contacting a solicitor on Monday. Please don't contact me except through legal channels." Monday, I met with a divorce lawyer in a modest office on High Street. I laid out the entire saga, the relentless comparisons, the emotional manipulation disguised as motivation. The solicitor listened, nodded knowingly. "Financial pressure as a form of emotional abuse," she said. "You have solid grounds for divorce based on irreconcilable differences." Back at work on Tuesday, Emma showed up unannounced, trying to get past security to see me. They politely but firmly escorted her out. Later that day, I received a call from Claire. Her voice was tight with anger and regret. "I had no idea she was using our marriage like this," she said. "I've cut ties with her. I feel violated." Word spread fast. Mutual friends started reaching out, expressing sympathy or surprise. Emma's own mother called me quietly one evening, apologizing for her daughter's behavior and admitting she'd seen similar patterns before. Always wanting more, never satisfied. That same week, Emma showed up at my hotel with a therapist in tow, insisting we start counseling immediately. I declined politely, closing the door gently but firmly. Counseling was for couples who wanted to fix things. I wanted to save myself. She sent a long email that weekend, explaining her motivation tactics, claiming she only wanted the best for me, that her methods were wrong but her intentions pure. Not once did she apologize for how she made me feel, only for being misunderstood. I replied briefly, "Motivation builds people up. You tore me down. There's a difference." By week 5, Emma was begging for one last face-to-face meeting. We agreed to meet at a busy cafe on Cowley Road, a place public enough to keep things civil. She arrived looking drained, the arrogance and entitlement replaced by vulnerability. She apologized profusely, promising she'd stopped the comparisons, that she'd lost sight of what mattered, begging for another chance. I listened, then asked 3 questions. Would you have stopped comparing me if I hadn't threatened divorce? She hesitated. Probably not right away. Did you ever consider how your words affected me? Or were you just focused on what you wanted? I thought I was helping, she admitted. I didn't think. Can you name 3 things you appreciate about me without mentioning what I could do better? Her eyes widened, struggling. You're responsible and smart. And, she faltered, unable to finish without adding a qualification. I nodded. That's all I needed. I told her, I appreciate your apology, but respect can't be restored once it's destroyed. You showed me who you really are when you don't get what you want. I deserve better. She tried to protest, but I held up my hand. You deserve better too. Someone whose wallet impresses you, who can give you the lifestyle you crave without budgets. I deserve someone whose gratitude doesn't come with a price tag. We want different things, and that's okay. But we can't want them from each other. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized, quiet, straightforward. I kept the house. Emma couldn't afford the mortgage on her marketing coordinator salary. I heard she struggled to date, always comparing men to impossible standards, and lost her friendship with Claire for good. Eventually, she moved to a smaller flat further out of town. 3 months after the divorce, I was promoted to senior project manager, the raise substantial enough to buy that Range Rover she wanted. Instead, I boosted my retirement fund and started dating someone new, a primary school teacher named Lucy. She drives a 10-year-old Ford Fiesta, owns no designer handbags, and when I took her to a nice restaurant downtown, she genuinely said, "This is too much." That's when I knew I'd found what I was missing. Someone who values effort, not expense. People ask if I regret how I handled it, if I should have tried counseling sooner, if 5 weeks was enough time to save a marriage. But they don't see the truth. I didn't leave because of 5 weeks of comparisons. I left because of what those weeks revealed, how she truly saw me. When someone shows you your worth is tied to your wallet, believe them. When they make it clear you'll never be enough unless you change, believe them. When marriage becomes a competition judged by Instagram highlight reels, believe them the first time. Emma didn't want a partner. She wanted a status symbol. When I couldn't be that, she tried to shame me into becoming her trophy husband. The car was just the symptom. The disease was disrespect waiting to surface. I learned the difference between ambition and greed, between wanting a good life and needing to prove you have one, between a partner who encourages growth and one who demands transformation. Most importantly, I learned I'm not in competition with anyone. I'm not trying to win approval by outspending other men or measuring my worth in luxury gifts. I'm just looking for someone who values me for who I am, not who I could become if I tried hard enough. Emma got what she wanted, the freedom to find her perfect provider. I got something better, the peace of knowing my worth isn't a price tag. But here's the thing, I still keep wondering. Was there ever really a chance for us? Or was the love we had just another illusion, waiting to be measured and compared until it broke? The answer might just be waiting for me in the quiet corners of that old semi in Headington. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the next chapter begins. The quiet of that old semi in Headington felt different when I returned alone. The walls, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now echoed with memories that hung heavy like fog over the Thames. I wandered through the rooms, each one a reminder of what we had, and what had slipped through my fingers. Emma's side of the bedroom still held traces of her presence. A pair of crimson heels tucked under the dresser, the soft scent of her jasmine perfume lingering faintly in the air. On the bedside table, a half-read novel lay forgotten, its dog-eared pages whispering stories of love and betrayal. I picked it up, fingers tracing the cover, wondering if she ever thought about us when she read those words. In the living room, the modest sofa sagged under the weight of our shared years. The TV remote lay on the cushion, a silent witness to evenings spent in comfortable routine, or maybe silent tension. I sat down, the fabric worn but familiar, and let my thoughts drift. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from Lucy. Simple and warm. "Dinner tonight? I found a new little bistro off Cowley Road. Thought you'd like it." I smiled, the first genuine one in days. She didn't need expensive dinners or flashy gifts. Just company. Just effort. That was enough. Later, as dusk settled over Oxford, I met Lucy at the bistro. She wore a soft green dress that complemented her hazel eyes, and her laughter filled the small space with light. Over plates of rustic pasta and a shared bottle of Chianti, we talked about everything and nothing, books, work, dreams. No comparisons, no tests, just two people enjoying the moment. But even as I found comfort in new beginnings, a nagging question lingered. How does a marriage dissolve under the weight of unspoken expectations and silent resentments? How did 5 weeks of comparison unravel 5 years of history? One evening, sifting through old emails, I stumbled upon an exchange between Emma and Claire from months before she moved to Oxford. Their conversation was sprinkled with subtle envy and quiet dissatisfaction. Emma had written about feeling stuck, about wanting more than our modest life could offer. Claire's replies were encouraging but tinged with hints of the very lifestyle Emma would later chase. Was this the seed of discontent? A quiet whisper that grew until it became a roar? The thought unsettled me, but it also sparked a determination. If I was going to move forward, I needed to understand, not just for closure, but to avoid the same trap again. Then came an unexpected call from Claire. Her voice was hesitant. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About my marriage, about Emma. I'm not sure we really know each other at all." Her words opened a door to a story I hadn't anticipated. A story of secrets buried beneath designer handbags and perfect Instagram posts. A story that hinted at cracks in the polished facade of their seemingly perfect life. As I hung up, a chill ran down my spine. If Emma's comparison game was just the surface, what lay beneath? And how deep did the fractures run? The past was never really past. It was a shadow, waiting patiently in the corners of the present. And it seemed, no matter how far I drove or how many new dinners I shared with Lucy, that shadow was about to step into the light. Because sometimes, the hardest part of moving on isn't letting go. It's facing the truths you tried to ignore. And that truth? Well, that was the real story yet to be told. A week after that call from Claire, I found myself walking through the narrow cobbled streets of Summertown, the affluent Oxford neighborhood Emma had so often idealized. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over the elegant townhouses and manicured gardens. It was the kind of place where every front door told a story of success and quiet privilege. Stories I'd never really been part of. I had arranged to meet Claire at a small cafe tucked between a boutique bookstore and a florist. She was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table, her blonde hair pulled back loosely, face softened by the late afternoon light but with a tension I hadn't seen before. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice low. "There's a lot I think you should know." Claire's story was nothing like the glossy Instagram posts Emma had obsessed over. Behind the designer bags and the weekend getaways was a marriage strained by long hours, unspoken resentments, and a desperate need to maintain appearances. James, the successful lawyer, was often absent, physically present but emotionally distant. The expensive gifts were less about love and more about compensation for the time he wasn't there. Claire confessed that she felt trapped in a cycle of trying to prove their happiness to the outside world while quietly doubting if it was real at all. "It's exhausting," she said, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just playing a part." I nodded, the pieces clicking into place. Emma's comparisons weren't just about wanting more. They were about chasing an illusion, trying to escape the monotony and uncertainty of our life by measuring it against a fantasy. But why use me? I asked quietly. Why drag your marriage into this? Claire hesitated. I think Emma was jealous, not just of James or the lifestyle but of the certainty. She wanted proof that she'd made the right choice, that her life was worth more than it felt. We talked for hours, peeling back layers of friendship, envy, and regret. It was clear that Emma's dissatisfaction had been brewing long before she reconnected with Claire, but the reunion had fanned the flames. As the evening shadows deepened, Claire leaned in. There's something else, she said, voice dropping. Something Emma didn't tell you. My heart skipped a beat. She's been hiding debts, Claire said slowly. Credit cards, loans. She's been masking it all with small purchases and borrowed money. It's why she pushed so hard for a lifestyle upgrade. She needed to keep up appearances, even if it meant digging a deeper hole. I blinked, stunned. The woman I thought I knew was living a secret life beneath the surface of comparison and demands. Claire looked at me with a mixture of guilt and resolve. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I wasn't sure how. And now, well, you deserve to know. As I left the cafe, the weight of that revelation settled over me like a storm cloud. The problem wasn't just about respect or love. It was tangled up in lies and desperation. The foundation of our marriage had been cracked long before the BMW, the kitchen, or the trips. And now, standing on the edge of that fracture, I realized I had a choice. To be crushed by the rubble or to build something new. But even as I made that silent vow, a new message buzzed on my phone. A cryptic text from Emma. Just 3 words. We need talk. The past wasn't done with me yet. And whatever was coming next, I had a feeling it was going to change everything. The message from Emma sat on my phone screen like a ticking time bomb. We need talk. I stared at those 3 words longer than I cared to admit, weighing every possible scenario. Was it remorse? Anger? Another round of games? Or something darker? Something I wasn't prepared for? After a restless night in my flat on Iffley Road, I agreed to meet her. We chose a neutral ground, a quiet park bench in South Park, where the autumn leaves were turning gold and the air held that sharp, crisp edge that only October can bring. Neither of us spoke for a long moment, watching the squirrels dart between the trees, the world moving on as if our private storm didn't exist. Emma arrived wearing a soft gray cashmere sweater and dark jeans. Her hair pulled back loosely, but with strands falling around her face, softening her sharp features. Her eyes, once so confident and piercing, now held a vulnerability I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. There was a subtle fragility in the way she wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to protect what little was left. I'm sorry, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Not just for everything I said, but for hiding things from you. I nodded slowly. Claire told me about the debts. Her face paled. How did she? She knows more than I ever expected. And now I know why you pushed so hard for all those things. It wasn't just about wanting nicer things. It was about survival. Emma looked down at her hands, twisting a silver ring on her finger. I was drowning, she admitted. And instead of asking for help, I tried to keep it all together by chasing a life I thought I deserved. I didn't mean to drag you into it. I thought if I could just keep up appearances, everything would be okay. A bitter laugh escaped me. Appearances don't pay the bills, Emma. No, they don't, she said quietly. But I was terrified of losing everything, of being nothing. I thought if I could make you see the life I wanted, maybe you'd try harder. Maybe we could fix it together. I sighed, the weight of those words settling deep. Fixing it would have meant honesty, respect, trust. Instead, you made it a competition. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I was scared. I didn't know how else to hold on. We sat in silence, the park around us alive with the soft rustle of leaves and distant laughter of children. For a moment, I almost believed we could find a way back. But then the truth hit harder than any apology. This isn't just about money or trust, I said. It's about how you saw me, or didn't see me. You turned our marriage into a scoreboard, and I was losing from the start. Emma's shoulders trembled.
I'm sorry.
I really am. I stood, brushing the leaves from my jeans. Sorry doesn't undo 5 weeks of daily comparisons, or the months of lies. I've made my choice. She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. So what now? I paused, then said, now we both have to live with the consequences. And I have to find a way to rebuild. Starting with myself. Walking away, I felt the weight of the past lifting just a little. But the future? That was still uncertain. A blank page waiting to be written. As I turned the corner, my phone buzzed again. A new message, from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story. Meet me tomorrow. 7 p.m. The Bell and Crown. My heart quickened. Just when I thought the curtain had fallen, the real drama was about to begin. The Bell and Crown was one of those old Oxford pubs with dark wooden beams and a cozy fireplace that crackled softly against the chill evening air. It sat tucked away on a quiet lane, the kind of place locals talked about in hushed tones. Part history, part mystery. I arrived early, nursing a pint of bitter as I scanned the room, trying to spot whoever had sent the cryptic message. At exactly 7 p.m., a figure slipped through the door. A woman I didn't recognize at first. Her auburn hair was pulled into a loose bun, strands framing a face marked by sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. She wore a tailored trench coat over a simple black dress, and there was an air of calm confidence about her despite the tension in the room. Michael Harper? She asked, sliding into the seat opposite me without waiting for an invitation. That's me, I said cautiously. And you are? Claire's sister, she replied. Olivia. My mind raced. Claire had never mentioned a sister. I didn't know she had family here. Olivia's lips tightened. Not many do. We keep things private. She leaned in, voice low. What you've heard is only part of the story. Emma's unhappiness, the debts, the comparisons. They're symptoms, not the cause. I frowned. Then what is? Control, she said bluntly. Emma's been living in a shadow for years. Pressure from her family. Expectations she could never meet. Secrets she buried deep. She's not just chasing a lifestyle. She's trying to escape a past that's darker than you know. I took a sip of my drink, the bitter tang grounding me as I listened. Claire tried to help, but she's trapped too. James isn't just distant. He's involved in things that aren't exactly legal. Emma found out. That's why she pushed so hard to keep up appearances. To hide what was really going on. The room seemed to tilt. Illegal dealings? Hidden debts? Shadows I'd never glimpsed? Why tell me this now? I asked. Because you're caught in the crossfire. Emma's desperation is spiraling, and it's about to get worse. If you want to protect yourself and what remains of your life, you need to understand the full picture. Before I could respond, Olivia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes darkening. I have to go, but I'll be in touch. With that, she slipped out as quietly as she'd arrived, leaving behind a swirl of questions and a growing sense of unease. I sat back, the pub's warm light suddenly feeling colder. The neat little world I'd known. Work, marriage, weekend trips, was unraveling faster than I could keep up. Outside, the night wrapped around the ancient city like a velvet cloak. I pulled my coat tighter and looked up at the stars, wondering just how deep the darkness ran. Because in the game Emma had started, the stakes were no longer about cars or kitchen renovations. They were about secrets, survival, and the dangerous lengths people go to protect their facades. And as the Bell and Crown's door swung shut behind Olivia, I knew one thing for certain. This story was far from over. The next morning, Oxford woke under a pale, hesitant sun, the kind that promised clarity but delivered only shadows. I sat at my kitchen table, nursing a black coffee that had long since gone cold. Olivia's words replaying in my mind like a broken record. Illegal dealings? Hidden debts? A darkness lurking beneath the polished surfaces of Emma's world? It was hard to reconcile with the woman I thought I knew. Determined to find answers, I decided to dig deeper. My first stop was the local council offices, where I requested public records on Emma's recent financial activities. The paperwork was dense, mortgage statements, loan applications, credit inquiries, and buried within them were clues. Multiple credit cards maxed out, a second mortgage I hadn't known about, and payments to lenders I'd never heard of. It was a web of financial strain that explained so much: the pressure, the desperation, the relentless comparisons. But it also raised new questions. Who were these lenders? Were they just ordinary banks or something more sinister? Later that afternoon, I found myself outside a small, unmarked office in Jericho. The kind of place where you didn't expect to find help but hoped desperately for answers. Inside, I met with a woman named Sarah, who worked as a debt counselor. After reviewing the documents I'd brought, she sighed heavily. "Mr. Harper, your wife's debts are extensive and complicated. Some of these loans come from legitimate sources, but others are linked to high-interest lenders, loan sharks. Really, it's not uncommon for people in her situation to spiral deeper, trying to keep up appearances." I swallowed hard, the weight of it settling like a stone in my chest. "Is there anything that can be done?" Sarah shook her head. "Only if she's willing to face it. But people in that cycle often deny the problem until it's too late." That evening, I sat alone in our old living room, the faded wallpaper and familiar furniture mocking me with their quiet permanence. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Hesitant, I answered. "Michael," came a voice I hadn't expected. "James." There was weariness in his tone, but also something urgent. "We need to talk," he said. "There's more you don't know about Emma, about me, things that could change everything." I agreed to meet him the next day at a cafe near the university. When we met, James was a different man than the polished lawyer I'd seen at dinner. His eyes were haunted, his voice low and hurried. "Emma found out I'm involved with some questionable people," he confessed. "I thought I could keep it separate, protect her, but she stumbled on the truth. That's why she's been frantic, pushing for a lifestyle to cover cracks that were breaking wide open." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry you got dragged into this. It's messy, dangerous." I looked him in the eye. "What kind of danger?" James hesitated. "Let's just say, if Emma's debts aren't paid, the people she owes don't take kindly to being ignored." A cold shiver ran down my spine. As I left the cafe, the Oxford streets felt less inviting, shadows lurking behind every corner. The life I thought I was losing was tangled in something far darker, and I realized that the game Emma had started wasn't just about money or respect. It was a fight for survival. And now I was right in the middle of it. The weight of James's words pressed down on me like the damp Oxford fog creeping through the narrow streets. Debt collectors, dangerous lenders, secrets that threatened more than just a marriage. They were a ticking time bomb, and somehow I was caught in the blast radius. That night, I sat in our old house, the silence deafening. I thought about Emma, the woman who had transformed from my partner into an adversary, driven by desperation and fear. I thought about Claire, caught in her own tangled web, and James, whose polished exterior barely concealed the shadows beneath. But most of all, I thought about myself, about the life I wanted, a life grounded in respect, trust, and honesty, and about the crossroad ahead. The next morning, I made a decision. First, I contacted a solicitor to begin formal proceedings, not just for divorce, but to protect myself from the financial fallout. Then, I reached out to Sarah, the debt counselor, to explore options for Emma, hoping that somewhere beneath the chaos, she might find a path to redemption. Days blurred into weeks as the legal process unfolded. Emma's calls and messages grew sporadic, her desperation replaced by silence. Claire cut ties completely, unwilling to be dragged further into the storm. James disappeared from public view, his reputation quietly unraveling. And me? I focused on rebuilding. I poured myself into work, earning a promotion that felt less like victory and more like survival. I found solace in Lucy's steady presence, a reminder that love need not be measured in gifts or grand gestures, but in simple, genuine moments. But even as I moved forward, the shadows lingered. One evening, as I closed up my flat, a small envelope slipped under the door caught my eye. Inside was a single photograph, faded and torn, showing Emma standing beside a man I didn't recognize, their faces serious, the backdrop a nondescript warehouse. On the back, a single word was scrawled in hurried handwriting, "Watch." My pulse quickened. The past was not done with me. Not yet. As I folded the photo, a cold realization settled in. The story of Emma, Claire, James, and the tangled web they'd woven was far from over. And whatever secrets that photograph hinted at, I was about to find out. Because some truths refuse to stay buried. And some games have consequences that echo long after the final move. The question now wasn't if I would uncover the whole story. It was whether I'd be ready for what it revealed. The next chapter was waiting, and whatever it held, I knew one thing for certain. My life would never be the same again.